evening. I am calling the Oceanside Planning Commission meeting for Monday, June 21st to order. If we could rise and have Commissioner Hayes lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Planner, a couple of things. If you could do roll call, and then I think we have a technical issue here. I don't know if we have a mic for Commissioner Hayes. Nope. We could share. It always works. You want to do the roll call while we're waiting for this?
Good evening. Chairperson Rosales,
Present?
Vice Chair Morrissey,
Present.
Commissioner Balma,
Present.
Commissioner Custer,
Here.
Commissioner Hayes,
Oh,
Here.
I forgot.
Commissioner Goodkind, I believe, is on Zoom,
Present.
and Commissioner Rains, I believe, is also on Zoom.
I'm here via Zoom.
So, Mr. Chairman, you have all 7 of your members, 5 in the chambers and 2 participating via Zoom. You do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Housekeeping statement first. So this meeting is conducted in accordance with Governor Newsom's Executive Order 2920 relating to the COVID-19 virus. That order suspends several provisions of the Brown Act related to telephonic participation by the Planning Commission, staff members, and the public. Due to applicable public health orders, the city council chambers are open to the public with masks required for unvaccinated individuals in all areas of City Hall. Members of the public are encouraged to listen and watch the meeting via Zoom, by computer, or by phone. The meeting can also be watched on KOCT Cox Channel 19, AT&T Channel 99, or on live stream on KOCT's web page. To participate via Zoom, you can find that information on the city's website, likewise by phone. Okay, let's proceed then on the agenda. Communications on matters not on the agenda tonight. City Planner, any slips to speak on an item?
Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers on non-agenda items.
Thank you. Approval of minutes from the previous meeting. That would be the meeting of June 7th, 2021. Any comments by commissioners? Any edits? Seeing none, let's do do we have approval this evening via, oh, we do. I see the screen behind us. How do you want us to vote this evening on items?
Mr. Chairman, because we have 2 commissioners participating via Zoom, we can't use the automated system behind you.
Okay, then I'll do a roll call. And I'll just do it on this item. Any commissioners not approving the minutes for June 7th, 2021 meeting? Hearing nothing, we will consider those minutes approved by the commission. Consent calendar, we have nothing on the agenda tonight, nor do we have anything for transportation items. Public hearings. Item number 4 is consideration of a development plan and regular coastal permit to request approval to allow the demolition of an existing single-family residence in order to allow the construction of a new 3-story quadplex structure located at 1930 Broadway Broadway. Applicant Tony and Michael Castellato. Disclosures, Commissioner Custer,
Read the staff report and drove by.
Commissioner Hayes,
Read the staff report and looked at it by Google.
Vice Chair Morrissey,
Read the materials and visited the site.
Commissioner Bama,
I also did the same, staff report and visited the site.
Commissioner Goodkind,
Same.
and Commissioner Rains.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did the staff report review, and then I also did a Google Street View.
Thank you. I also read the staff report and did a drive-by. We have a presentation. Mr. Greenbauer, go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Rosales, Vice Chair Morrissey, members of the Planning Commission, public in attendance, as well as those on Zoom today. Name's Richard Greenbauer, here with Development Services to present the quadplex proposal at 1930 Broadway. The request is for a development plan and regular coastal permit in order to demolish an existing single-family residence and construct 4 units. There we go. The new structure would be approximately 3 stories, contain 4 units, and have a total square footage of 9,500 square feet. Private open space in the form of rooftop deck, as well as balconies. Close to 3,000 square feet will be part of this project. And just for a little housekeeping, there was one inquiry on this project by a resident to the east of this site. They had a number of questions, and that was one of your attachments. It looked like this, redlined, and it should have been one of the attachments for you. The applicant, as well as I, responded to them and their concerns and comments, and they were satisfied. And I don't believe they're here to speak this evening, but that was the only public input that we received on this project. And moving forward, you can see this is the trend of redevelopment that's occurring in South Oceanside, as well as the town site neighborhood areas, where we're seeing the older beach bungalows getting demolished, and then more higher density appropriate to the zoning and general plan coming forward in order to provide more housing stock for the city of Oceanside. I provided an overview of the required zoning requirements. You can see the project meets all requirements for the parcel in question. It is required to have 1 enclosed space for 2-bedroom units. All units will be 2 bedrooms, and so 4 total garage spaces will be included. Will be access off the alley, so there will be no curb cuts. We'll maintain all on-street parking. Next area that we brought is the architectural rendering. The materials, you can see it's a California, coastal type design, which is consistent with the redevelopment patterns that we're seeing. They have implemented a lot of articulation in the wall planes, both vertically and horizontally, and then brought quality materials to ensure that it can withstand the elements this close to the ocean and yet be a nice benefit to the surrounding community as it redevelops. Staff also worked with the applicant to prepare a massing context study showing the redevelopment that has occurred along Broadway up to Cassidy. And the top picture, number 1, you can see that's the Broadway Cassidy condos I brought to you. I think it's been probably 5 years now, but that was the last project that I've done in this immediate area. So it is consistent with the surrounding redevelopment that is occurring and is consistent with overall massing in the neighborhood. With that, staff has determined that the 4-unit apartment project meets all the development standards, is consistent with the zoning, and consistent with general plan policy A for the land use element. We're bringing a modern coastal style design into the neighborhood and redeveloping in an appropriate manner. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission issue a Class 32 infill exemption and approve the development plan regular coastal permit by adopting the attached resolution. And I make myself available for any questions or comments. We also have the applicant and the representatives in the chambers this evening. They don't have a presentation for you, but they are available for questions.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions for Mr. Greenbauer? Go ahead.
Kind of a general question, not even really specific to this project, but obviously this project in the alleyway, there's a lot of the overhead existing power lines, and we always hear the call whenever something like this comes along, like, why don't they underground the utilities? And I know it goes into a fee, but how far along, like, does that street have to be, brought up to speed, developed, whatever, before they go back and maybe underground the utilities that all these projects have paid into? Is there some kind of way that you track that, or is that just something that goes into a big pot of money that goes to whatever the city decides they want to use it for, or how does that work?
Commissioner Obama, thank you again for the question. We previously asked that one, and the city engineer, yes, it does go into a fund, and then they prioritize the areas. I think they're working in Fire Mountain right now to do undergrounding of utilities, and then they'll move to the various areas when they have enough projects, I guess, online to do the underground. So if it's not being done as part of the project, then the in lieu fee or impact fee will be put into that pot.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Will enough fees be collected over time to do all of the overhead lines in an area, or really the city, or is that not feasible or possible?
Chair Rosales, as far as feasible, it just depends on the redevelopment that occurs over time. And so putting a date, time, and amount is really, it's hard to guess or speculate at this time.
Yeah, fair enough. Any other questions? Commissioner Goodkind or Raines?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You said the applicant did not have a presentation for this item.
That's correct, but we do have the family and the developer and their whole team here in case you have questions for them.
Great. Any questions for the applicant? Don't see any. And then this is a public hearing, so you indicated, Mr. Greenbauer, there was no opposition or those issues were resolved. That being said, City Planner, any slips to speak to this item from the public?
Mr. Chairman, we have no requests that have been submitted, but it is a public hearing, and with the chambers back open, we should just ask if there's anyone in the chambers.
Yeah, anybody would like to speak on this item, now would be the time to come forward. You'd have 3 minutes. Don't see anybody rushing forward to speak on the item, so we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for deliberation, questions, or simply a motion.
I think it's a great project, and I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
Go right ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we confirm issuance of Class 32 infill categorically exemption for infill development projects pursuant to Section 1533(2) of the California Environmental Quality Act, and approve development plan D20-00017 and regular coastal permit RC20-00011 by adopting Planning Commission Resolution Number 2121 P25 with findings and conditions of approval attached herein.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Custer. A second, anybody? We have a second by Vice Chair Morrissey. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Commissioner Obama.
I also like to comment how nice the project is and to thank the applicant for putting their energy and their time and their money into Oceanside. So thank you.
Great. Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Don't see any hands raised for anything else. So let's go ahead and vote. I will start on my right. Commissioner Obama?
Yes.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
Yes.
Commissioner Hayes?
Yes.
Commissioner Custer?
Yes.
Commissioner Goodkind?
Yes.
And Commissioner Raines?
I vote to approve.
And I too am a yes. City Planner?
We'll record that as 7 in favor, 0 against. The motion passes.
Great, thank you. Good luck on your project. Okay, item 5 on the agenda tonight is consideration of a general plan amendment to remove from the city's circulation element an extension of Melrose Drive between North Santa Fe Drive and Spur Avenue. This proposed amendment would amend text and map exhibits in the circulation element to remove the reference to the extension of this segment of Melrose Drive. The applicant in this case is the city of Oceanside. I'll go around and ask for disclosures. Commissioner Custer?
I read the staff report and looked at both sides of Melrose, although I'm quite familiar with them also.
Thank you. Commissioner Hayes?
I probably did a little bit more, but read the staff report, know the site very well, requested meetings with fire, police department, and the city traffic engineer, and also reviewed some historical documents, including an EIR for High Hope, which is now Marisol, and one for Home Depot.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Morrissey?
Read the report, read some emails from the fire department responding to Jolene, and I know the area and did a review.
Commissioner Obama?
I also staff report, know the area very well, and got the emails and from different members of the commission. Also been on the planning commission now for years, as this has been discussed, pulled on and off several different ways. So heard a lot about the Melrose extension.
Yeah. Commissioner Goodkind?
Yes, I read the staff report and the communication with Commissioner Hayes, and did not receive any other public communication.
Thank you. And
I'm
Commissioner,
very familiar with the area, sorry.
that's all right. Commissioner Raines?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am very familiar with the area. I reviewed the staff report and the corresponding communications.
Thank you. I too had an opportunity to read the staff report, communicated with a bit with staff, and of course saw the emails from Commissioner Hayes, and longtime resident of Oceanside too. I'm very familiar with the discussion for a long time about the Melrose extension. So good evening, and we have a city engineer, city traffic engineer, who's been with the city for about a year, and first opportunity to present in front of this commission. Let me throw my glasses on. Hamid, I want to get your last name right. Hamid Bahadouri, if I've got it correctly. Welcome, and if you walk us through your presentation.
Good evening, Chairman Rosales, members of the commission. Pleasure to be here with you. I've been with the city almost a year, as Chairman Rosales said. First opportunity to have a presentation in front of you. Had the pleasure of meeting those of you in the chamber before the meeting. Looking forward to discussion tonight. The project, as Commissioner Walmart mentioned, is a culmination of about 30 years of planning and coordination effort on the city staff part. This project is simply it's a corridor that starts in the city of Carlsbad at San Elias, and then comes all the way up to North Santa Fe in the city of Oceanside. And then there's a gap about 3/4 of a mile, and then the corridor picks up from Spur all the way to 76, with a little short stop north of 76. The corridor from Carlsbad to Santa Fe is about 11 miles, and the gap has been there, and the city has been thinking about it and working with the county and all the other stakeholders. We started talking, by we I mean city staff in those days, started talking with the county in 1991 to have a joint project. However, due to lack of funding, they kind of put the project on hold, and then they came back in 2009, and in 2009, the city hired an environmental consultant to prepare an EIR for the project. An EIR was prepared in 2009. The EIR was certified in July of 2010. However, a subsequent lawsuit was filed by an outside firm, an outside group, which was settled in July 2011 to the satisfaction of the parties. The result of the settlement was that the road is going to be reduced in section from 6 lanes to 4 lanes, and some of the footprints of the road and the embankment was changed to minimize the impact on the sensitive area and the habitat. And so as a result of that, the certification of the IR was okay, and the city started to proceed. The city started the design process and hired a consultant to do the design work for the project in 2012. And that project went on and until about 2014, 2015, until the design was completed. We have construction-ready plans prepared for the project with a cost estimate of about $45 million, excluding any right-of-way acquisition. However, on March 27, 2019, the City Council, in their meeting, approved a motion to direct the staff to terminate further construction-related activities on the project and instead go back and prepare studies evaluating the consequences and the impacts of taking this road, this link, from the city circulation element altogether. There has been some staff changes in the city, including myself, my predecessor. When he left the city, there was a vacancy about 6 months, and then there was all delays related to pandemic, which I'm sure you appreciate and we all experienced, unfortunately, that was the reason because of March 2019, and now we are in June 2021. That's the reason for the delay. That's why we are in front of you a little bit late. However, we have prepared a study for you. There are 3 reports presented to you. One is the traffic circulation study report, one is noise analysis, and one is air quality. Obviously, probably your primary interest is going to be on the traffic report, but the other 2 reports are also available. With that, I would like to introduce Mr. Mike Arizabal, who is the project manager for the consulting team on the project. He's with the consulting firm of IBI, and he will walk you through the studies and analysis that they have done for us, and then we will both be available if you have any questions. Mike.
Hi, thank you, Hamid. Good evening, commissioners, chairs, vice chair. Again, I'm Mike Arizabal with IBI Group. I'm a senior transportation planner. IBI Group's a architecture and engineering firm specializing in some of these traffic circulation studies throughout Southern California. So just, to start, what are the 2 future scenarios that we're looking at? It's just with and without the Melrose Drive extension in as a roadway connection. What's our study area that we're looking at? We look at intersections and roadway segments, and these are the locations that are anticipated to be affected by taking this link out of the roadway network system. And then what are we concerned with? It's going to be level of service from an intersection standpoint. What is the carrying capacity of the roadway segments? And then what are the VMT changes with the associated SB 743 changes that rolled out June of 2020? And then who are the jurisdictions involved? Intersections lie primarily in the city of Oceanside also, but we have some intersections in Vista, and then we've got a couple Caltrans locations there. Okay, how did we develop what the future traffic volumes would look like? So we looked at a base year of 2030 forecast year. The transportation network, we use Series 13, which is a SANDAG approved model that they're currently using now. The land use plan, we had to make some adjustments because there were some major projects within the land use plan that were not included in the model. So we listed those here. There's 4 projects that we identified with city planning, which is Nagata Residential, Ocean Camp, Via Astoria, and then North River Farms. So we're able to put those projects into the background traffic. And then a key roadway network assumption is that the SR 76 is a 4-lane facility, and then obviously the only change that we're going to do is with and without the Melrose extension. So just a brief synopsis on model outputs. So they forecast future approach and departures, right? So it's just your northbound or southbound movements. It doesn't actually spit out what the left through and right turn lanes would be. So what we did is use historical count data to determine what are the appropriate splits that we should be utilizing on an intersection by intersection basis. And this just covers what the significant impact criteria is. So City of Oceanside and Vista, your target for a intersection is level service D, and then it's considered an impact if it goes from D to E or F. Also, if it's already operating at unacceptable level service at E or F, if you add 2 seconds of delay to that intersection, it'll be considered impact. Caltrans is a little bit more strict. Their target is C or better, and then the same kind of significant criteria for them. For roadway segments, we look at the City of Oceanside circulation element, their capacity thresholds. So that's just on a volume basis. So you look at whether or not the volume increases exceed the defined thresholds by the city. And then finally, VMT, the state's OPR technical advisory comes up with the guidelines for that. And we looked at the change in total VMT within the city and in the region as a whole. So the first thing that we looked at was the VMT impact analysis. The state guidelines don't explicitly outline this type of project on what the impacts would be. So what we did was we presented the change in total VMT in the city and region-wide. VMT is vehicle miles traveled, it's the distance for each trip that is occurring within the network. And as you can see, within the city of Oceanside, it's less than 2% change if you take the Melrose extension out. And then in the Sandag region, it's less than 1%. So it's fairly nominal when you're talking about a total percent of change. All right. So the roadway segment impact analysis. So we had 10 study area roadway segments to look at here. So how we presented is we have the roadway name and then the limits of it. So for example, the first one, it's Melrose Drive from the SR 76 down to Old Ranch Road. There's 6 lanes there defined by the circulation element. Here's our ADT values and our corresponding level of service. So you could see all 10 roadway segments, whether the Melrose extension is in or out, all operate at acceptable level of service C or better. Some highlights of this is roadway 1, there's minus 12,000 vehicles or so there. That's because we're taking the Melrose extension out, so 12,000 vehicles would not be utilizing that segment. You'll see increases on North Santa Fe Avenue. That's just because of reallocation of traffic based on taking that segment out of the circulation element there. The volumes show that with the Melrose in condition, cars use Melrose as a north-south connector to connect to the SR 76. And then the third and final thing that we looked at was the intersections. So we selected, obviously, the intersections that would be impacted by taking this extension out of the system network. So with the extension in, there's a total of 6 intersections that operate unacceptably. If we take the extension out, that goes down to 4 intersections that are impacted. And then if we do a comparison between the two, we have 2 impacted locations, which are Caltrans intersections. And that's North Santa Fe Avenue, SR 76, and then College Boulevard and SR 76. Should be noted that those 2 locations were also considered impacted as part of the 2012 EIR. So what we do is when we identify an impact, we look at what mitigation measures that we can implement to improve those conditions back to pre-project conditions. So at North Santa Fe and SR 76, we have this host of striping changes that we did. We didn't need to take any right-of-way in order to get these improvements in, and that actually improves the level of service back to pre-project conditions. The only issue is intersection 10. What we did for the roadway configuration there is we assumed what was part of the previous planning commission's conditions. So we improved that intersection as much as we could. In order to get that thing mitigated, we needed significant right-of-way acquisition, obviously to widen that intersection. So that location is considered an unavoidable impact as part of this project. So just a brief summary of what I went through. No impacts to citywide or regional VMT. There aren't any impacts to the roadway segments, so they're all forecasted to be at level of service C or better. Again, 6 out of the 12 are unacceptable with no project condition, which is the Melrose extension in, and then 4 out of the 12 are operating at an unacceptable level of service with the Melrose extension out. And then we did find 2 impacts out of the 12 per Caltrans criteria, and then one of those impacts would remain after mitigation due to the right-of-way that would need to be acquired. With that, I will bring it back to Mid for the next items and kind of what the actions are.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is the information which obviously in about 189 pages explained in detail in the report submitted to you. This is the summary of the findings. And at this time, we would like to ask you to review the information provided to you. And if you decide to proceed with deleting this roadway segment from city circulation element, then we would also request that you approve the Planning Commission Resolution Number 2021-P24. And with that, Mike and I are available for questions. We have representatives from other departments, also Fire and Police Department, if there will be a need for their offering testimony.
Ahmed, can you bring the presentation back up? I want to go back 2 slides. Not the questions, not the next one back, but there we go. I didn't get a chance to read the 3rd and 4th bullet and 5th one. Maybe you can go over the summary one more time, just because my brain is not as quick tonight as it would be if it was 7 in the morning.
Of course, Mr. Chairman. Basically, the finding of this study is that in terms of VMT, the vehicle mile traveled, although there are changes, but these are not what's considered significant impacts, either citywide or regional. There are no impacts to the city, to the study area roadway system. All the roadway system links will operate at level of service C or better. 6 of the 12 study intersections will operate at unacceptable level of service in the no project alternative, which is assuming the road extension in. But when the road segment link is deleted, the 6 changes to 4. Only 4 intersections will be operating at unacceptable level of service. 2 of those intersections will require mitigation measures. One of them, the intersection of SR 76 and North Santa Fe, that the mitigation is relatively simple. On the north side, it will be basically striping change, and we will add a transitional lane also for the right lane, which will require some widening on 76, but rather limited. The other intersection, College and 76, that intersection simply cannot be mitigated, and because of the high volume. And this is not the finding of this report, but the finding also of the 2012 EIR for circulation element. And that's why at that time, the city council decided that they're going to use the statement of overriding consideration for that project. Your commission on a previous project, the Via Astoria project, set conditions for improvements on the intersection of College and 76. And those conditions were then field checked, and they were modified with one minor modification. The developer was conditioned to prepare plans and cost estimate. The plans and cost estimate for the improvements at 76 and College have been prepared, and the cost estimate is about $3.5 million. And this project simply acknowledges that that intersection will remain at an unacceptable and unmitigatable condition. So this is basically, in a nutshell, the finding of the report.
I had one more question, so stay with the slides,
Sure.
or maybe go back. There was a comment made about the 1.97% increase on the impacts as being nominal, and I don't remember what slide that was, but it compared the Sandag impact as 0.58 and the Oceanside one with the extension as 1.97. Do you know what I'm referring to?
These are the, let me go back to that slide.
Yeah.
I believe you're referring to this slide.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, the VMT.
Yes, and this is the percent change increase in the VMT because of the longer route that people have to take, not having this road available. That will increase 1.97%, under 2%. That's for the city of Oceanside. For the county and for the whole region, it's about 0.5%. And that's what is considered not significant by Sandag criteria.
Okay, and that's a good explanation. I just want to get some kind of context. If 1.97% is nominal, what would not be nominal? 5%, 10%?
Mike, do you know that threshold? 10%.
10%?
Yes.
Wow, okay. Okay, I think we probably have some questions, so I can see my commissioners here. Any hands raised? And then maybe we can let the presentation go away so I can see the other two commissioners. Any questions here? Do you want to start, Commissioner Hayes?
I would love to.
Okay, jump right in.
Okay, I have a few questions, probably for either Hamid or traffic consultant. First question, this is just a real basic one. Historical counts that were used, I'm assuming that these were pre-COVID, is that correct?
Pardon me, Commissioner Hayes, I was distracted by Mike doing this. Would you repeat your question?
For the counts that you used, I'm assuming that they were pre-COVID and they were probably on a school day, correct?
That is true.
Okay, good. And then I was really curious about the extension. You said with and without the extension. Did that assume the bridge in or out?
The bridge, Melrose Bridge over San Luis Rey River is part of the city's circulation element. So this study has been done assuming that that bridge is in and will be constructed in the build-out horizon year.
Okay.
We have not done a study without the bridge.
I would have really have liked to have seen that, just understanding what the implications would be without the extension and without the bridge. I just know the reality of funding issues and trying to get funding for a bridge that is only for a small gap instead of part of an 11-mile corridor. I just don't see the reality of that bridge happening. So I would really like to see what it would look like from a traffic perspective without the bridge. That's just kind of a wish list item.
And Commissioner Hayes, to do the study without the bridge, it will require us about 4 months' time and about $20,000 to $25,000 extra expenditure. About $12,000 to $13,000 of that will go to SANDAC to do the model runs for the alternative without the bridge, and about $7,000 to $8,000 of that will go to consultant to redo with those assumptions. And the time is mostly on the SANDAC part, which they will need about 8 weeks to do the work for us to give us the numbers. So to do that study is about 4.5 months and about $20,000 to $25,000.
And kind of in line with that, you said Series 13, and I think is our circulation element update, is that being done with Series 14?
Our circulation element update will be done using Series 14, and those numbers will be available by SANDAC about November, December of this year.
So as part of this cost that you just mentioned and time to redo this, is that because we couldn't use Series 13 anymore and we'd have to use Series 14?
If we want to do the alternative analysis without the bridge, we will still use Series 13.
Okay.
We will still use Series 13 to be consistent with what has been done so far. And furthermore, Series 14 numbers are not available at this time. They will be available toward the end of this year. But with Series 13 numbers, we are going to need about 4.5 months and $20,000 to $25,000 in budget.
So that leads to, I guess, another question then. The consistency of this deletion and looking at it in the context of the overall circulation element, because then we're looking at two different sets of numbers and not truly understanding how this affects the overall changes that we're looking at as far as our land use, our housing element that's being updated, and all of the other changes that are happening. So is that true? Is that a true question?
The council decided on March 27 of 2019 to separate this project from the circulation element update and fast track this, and directed the staff to do this study, and that's what we're presenting to you today. The circulation element update, which we're also working on, is scheduled for next year to be presented to the Planning Commission and City Council. This study has used Series 13 and what SANDAC calls ABM1, which is Activity-Based Model 1. That's a version, the mathematical model that they're using. They're changing both. They're changing the mathematical model process that they're using. They're going to ABM 2+, Activity-Based Model 2+, and also the land use socioeconomic data that we use for this project is Series 13. They're going to be using Series 14. Our circulation element update will be using numbers from Series 14 and ABM 2+. They will be substantially different from the numbers that we have in this report. So if we want to tie this report into circulation element, the study that we have so far is not of much value, and that effort has to be redone all over again with the new model and the new numbers.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know how long I'm allowed to go on.
You can
Tom,
go on
but-
for a long time, but maybe I can ask a follow-up question, the one you just asked. So is there greater value in doing the modeling again and that extra expenditure to do the Series 14? And this is language I'm not familiar with, but what I'm hearing is the model was done using one approach, and now the general circulation element is going to be using other data and information. Is there value to pull that old modeling into this new modeling, because then we have a more realistic look at the numbers and the modeling, or do I have that wrong?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that's the nature of transportation modeling, that the methodology changes every so often, not as often as the socioeconomic and land use data. But the socioeconomic and land use data is typically updated every 3 years. And so it is not uncommon to have a study going on at the same time. At the heel of the study, you have a new model and a new number. And so the agencies, including our city, we always have to make those decisions, which model and which version, which socioeconomic set of data we use for what study. And developers that come to the city always face that issue also, especially when we get into the transition periods like now. Now SANDAG is going through a major transition from Series, and again, I assume that you're familiar with Series 13 and Series 14. These are just jargons for set of data, land use, and socioeconomic, employment and housing and population. So it's not uncommon to have this issue that we do a study using a model, and the study takes maybe 1 or 2 years, and by the time the study is ready and presented to the decision makers like yourself and City Council, the regional agency is ready to go with a newer model. Whether we want to wait to go with a new model or not, that's a decision for you and City Council.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking. If we link the two efforts now that we've lost a couple of years since you're doing the circulation element as part of next year's effort, do we link the two at the same time? I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand. Is there value in doing that?
Well, the urgency of the project was not decided by us. It was by the City Council.
City Council, right.
And the City Council thought that this project is more urgent than the circulation element update, and it has to be addressed and should not wait for the circulation element update. That's why they directed the staff to initiate this study.
Got it. You want to continue? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So just understanding that, one other piece real quickly at VMT, my understanding is that anything over 0 is an impact, and I don't see any mitigation for that in here. And just knowing where these projects are located, the extension would make a cul-de-sac basically no longer a cul-de-sac. So you might actually have some bike, pedestrian, maybe even transit access that's not currently there. And those are the ways that you mitigate VMT. So without the extension, you're adding VMT that I can't think of a way you would mitigate it. So would it be part of the statement of override?
The VMT impact, the increases, 1.79 and 0.44, we are not recommending mitigation for those. They are just impacts. They are increases in the VMT, but since they fall below the 10% threshold, there is no mandate, there's no requirement for us to offer mitigation measures.
Okay, I know every city does things a little bit differently, and I'm still trying to understand what our thresholds here are. So 10%, and where is that for transportation projects?
Yeah, that's actually for development projects. This is considered a transportation project, and
Right.
OPR doesn't have explicit guidelines for that. So there isn't an impact threshold per se for this type of project.
Because it's
So what we're doing
typically,
is just disclosing what the VMP, not necessarily applying impact.
sorry for interrupting you. Boundary method, is that what you did then? And it sounds like you did it for the whole city. So you took the city and you just did the with and without the extension.
Correct, and you truncate it as it becomes outside of the study.
So you could have taken a reduced number of transportation analysis zones and been even more localized to see the true effect it would have on this region of the
Yeah,
city.
you could do a select link right in the focused area and get that.
Because I know just logically, understanding where Mission Vista High School is and understanding that it is a Vista Unified School District facility with about 2,000 kids, those kids could potentially come to school by walking or bike down Melrose if it went all the way through.
Sure.
But right now, there's no bike or pedestrian access permitted on 76. So the only way for them to get to school, I know there's some limited busing because I did reach out to Vista Unified School District to ask about that. And then the others, it's all cars. So these are all cars that are on 76 currently that otherwise would just be taking Melrose, correct?
Sure, so it does, yeah, they do reroute to northbound Santa Fe.
And I did look at a couple of the other traffic studies that were done for Home Depot and Marisol, like I mentioned, and I asked for the one for Mission Vista High School, but I don't think staff was able to locate that one. And just looking at those traffic studies, it showed about 20% of the traffic from all that development was supposed to be taking Melrose Extension and not ever touching 76 or College or Santa Fe. So I'm one of my biggest concerns is what are the unintended consequences of us deleting this, and what about the silent majority that hasn't asked council to look at the deletion of this?
Yeah, just for a point of clarification, we went through the MRGAs, which show the land uses throughout, and we confirmed with Sandag to make sure that we had an accurate picture of the future forecast. So projects that you mentioned are all included in our baseline.
Right.
The historical counts that were done in 2018 and 2017 do include those developments built out. So it's a little bit more accurate than what they were projecting back in 2004, Home Depot and the 1999 study. I think it was High Hope. Yeah, so we've accounted for those. Yep.
But the traffic is there, and it might not have been. And I saw that from your numbers. It shows like there should be almost 1,000 less vehicles on College than there are. And same with Santa Fe. The numbers were, even though it shows more intersections are impacted, I'm assuming that's because you have a couple of new intersections.
One of them is the new intersection, that's Santa Fe and Melrose. You're adding a fourth leg to that. Currently, it's a T intersection, so that obviously operates much better because there's less conflicting movement. But if you add that southbound leg to it and with the associated traffic, that actually gets it to be acceptable, regardless of what we put into currently.
So that was the part I thought was a little confusing probably when I was reading the staff report, because we went from having what this extension is supposed to reduce VMT and make things a little bit better, but we had more impacted intersections. But I think the story that doesn't come through readily is that the other intersections that are impacted are less impacted. They're operating slightly better with the extension than they would be without the extension in place.
Some location.
Yeah, like College and 76, for example,
Right.
and Santa Fe and 76.
Mm-hmm. And the other one that gets worse is the Santa Fe and Beaubier, and that's because with the Melrose extension in, you're now utilizing that more as a north-south connector as you wouldn't have without it there. So with that additional north-south traffic, that actually caused that impact. So that's why we have two more impacts in the with Melrose in condition versus.
And I think the one other thing I just wanted to mention was the safety and accessibility to this neighborhood, because I know from looking at some of the traffic studies, there were two other access points that were supposed to come in and out of Jeffries Ranch. I think it was Secretariat and Jeffries Ranch Road were both supposed to connect out. And with the improvement of 76, I understand those went away. So that whole entire area, meaning Home Depot, the housing behind Home Depot, and then Jeffries Ranch itself, they have one way in and out. I know this is a question I had asked fire department and police department, but they said there's two other dirt roads, I believe it is, that they can access to get in case of an emergency. But I was thinking, what happens if there's a crash at 76 in Melrose and somebody within that community is having a heart attack?
Yeah,
just a question like that.
Commissioner Hayes, Mr. Chairman, the road that you're referring to is Jeffrey's Ranch that used to connect in a full access as a T intersection to 76, when the 76 was a 2-lane highway. When Caltrans decided to widen 76 to a 4-lane highway with a K-rail median, which is its current configuration, they decided to cul-de-sac that road. It was not a city project. The city didn't initiate that. It was a Caltrans decision to cut off that connection to the 76 through Jeffrey's Ranch Road. And if you have any questions regarding evacuation and all that, we have representatives from Oceanside Police Department and Oceanside Fire Department. And it's like more their forte, and I will defer to them if you like.
Yeah, I would really appreciate, I know part of the concern has been from my community is more the access with the bridge and fire evacuation. And with Jeffrey's Ranch, I know there's some of that, even though it's not in a high severity area at this moment. I understand CAL FIRE is updating their maps, so we don't know exactly where those areas will be designated here in the future. It's one other reason why saving this for the general plan update might be a good idea, because the safety element is also being updated.
For that, let me invite the representative from Fire Department. Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, absolutely. Come on up, sir.
Thanks.
And Mr. Chairman, I just want to remind the commission that we haven't heard from the public yet, and this is questions, and I know questions can lead into statements, but if we start getting into deliberations and opinions, I'm uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I think we're just still at the data
Try to stick
gathering
it to
portion. So
questions.
go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Good evening. My name is Joe Ward. I'm the Deputy Fire Chief with Oceanside Fire Department. Thank you for having me, Chair Rosales and Commissioners. As far as evacuation, we've been, since the Lilac Fire, we've been doing a lot of updating to our current evacuation plans. The way it was done in the past was kind of a big kind of shot out look at evacuations. We met with the county. The fire department is currently enrolled in a program, evacuation program with the county. They lay out maps, and the maps are laid out in sequential form and sectioned off that we now can pinpoint neighborhoods down to each, like Jeffrey's Ranch, right to that neighborhood, and be able to send out notifications to those neighborhoods in particular without going and expanding throughout the entire area. So we're able to now do that. We're working with the police department to look at those maps to ensure that we're on the same page when we go to have a fire like Lilac, to be able to evacuate consistently. Unfortunately, when we go to evacuate people, people have their own minds and how they want to feel they want to get out. Part of that notification is giving a plan of evacuation and ways to get around the traffic and mitigate some of those congestion parts. We cannot predict exactly where everyone's going and how they're going to leave and where they're going to leave to, but we will have an opportunity to do it more concisely and precisely in getting people out in affected areas in an organized manner and a systematic approach. In the past, it wasn't so much a systematic approach. It was more of just a shotgun type thing. But the county came a long way in developing these evacuation maps. And we get them down to neighborhoods and pinpoint them and get that information out to those things. So evacuation, no matter how you look at it, it's going to be a little bit of chaos at some points. But if we can provide an organized, systematic approach on how to get them out, it'll be effective in getting those people out into those areas. But again, people look at different ways to look at it. When we look at going to services into different neighborhoods, we use a CAD system, and that CAD system looks at street speeds, freeway speeds, all that, and it calculates time of response. So it's already set within that CAD system. It's not a system that is similar to Google, where it does live time data. That's the next step or next evolution of the CAD system, is to get live street data. But a lot of times what we utilize in our programming is not only the CAD data, but we use a mapping program that provides live data and to get in and out of different areas based on the traffic congestion. So there's a couple ways to look at it.
Great, thank you. Did you have a more specific question?
Yes. When you're looking at a neighborhood that has upwards of about 1,000 homes, how many access points do you typically like to have in and out of that community?
Well, it's hard to say because we don't really have a choice at that, at some points. Some of the neighborhoods are pre-built prior to us getting there, like this recent one with, I remember Jeffrey's Ranch having that exit to the 76 before they widened it. That was an access point for us at some points, depending on our response. If it was on that end, we'd use that response. If it was on the other end, we'd use a different routing. So it's all depending on the neighborhood and all that. We can't really determine what's perfect. Ideally, the more the better, but at the same time, we're given what we got and we utilize what we can. And again, we have many ways to get in different neighborhoods. We use a system and to be able to navigate those streets.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other commissioners with questions for staff or?
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner Goodkind.
Just a quick question for clarification. The report, I believe, says that staff is not making a recommendation, but just presenting information. But I thought I heard, and maybe I misheard, but I thought I heard tonight in the presentation a recommendation from staff. So could staff clarify whether they have a position on this or not, please? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff did not make a recommendation as the technical work on the project was proceeding and in the direction of implementing the project. And the city council, in view of concerns that community had and other considerations, decided to terminate the project and tell staff to go and evaluate the ramifications of removing the link from circulation element and come back and report the findings to the council, not the recommendation to the staff, to the council. And that's what we are exactly doing. We are offering information and findings, and we are not making any recommendations. The decision rests with your body and the city council.
So just to clarify, you've given us the findings, the background, if you will, to be able to remove this from the circulation element if we choose to do that. That's what we have in front of us.
That is exactly correct. It was decided to provide information, findings, and impacts of removing the link from the circulation element if the council so chooses. We were not asked to come back with a recommendation. We were asked to come back with analysis and findings, and that's what we're doing.
Great, thank you. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Goodkind?
Yes, thank you for the clarification. I'll defer my other questions until after the public has spoken.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Rains, I don't see your hand up. Did you have a question, though, or?
Not at this time. I'll reserve until after public comment.
Okay. I think that is a good segue then to go to the public for their input. I do see a few folks in the chambers and then staff. I don't know if you have some other folks online as well. So I see you nodding at the head. So your take, if you want to start with the council or chambers and go that direction, or on Zoom.
Let's start with the speakers that are on Zoom. We have two speakers that signed up to speak today. First speaker is Jane Marshall, and the second speaker on deck will be Diane Nygaard. Jane, you're free to speak.
Good evening, commissioners. Appreciate all of your effort. I did want to just kind of recap some of the issues with the Melrose extension that has been going on now for probably multiple decades at this point. The first one is it's just too darn expensive. The $45 million estimate for putting in less than a 2-mile section of road because of all the issues in mitigation just doesn't make sense when Oceanside needs that money in other places. And that estimate was from the 2012-2013. So God only knows what the cost would ultimately be for proceeding with something like this for less than 2% vehicle miles traveled improved service. It doesn't make any sense. The other thing is that it's unnecessary. The staff report and the evaluation that was done show that whether in or out, there are still acceptable levels of service. There have been many comments from local residents to add the extra turning lane to North Santa Fe going on to 76, which sounds like that's in process, or restriping and whatnot. And there are other significant impacts with the college in 76 that cannot be mitigated, even with trying to negotiate with Caltrans, as discovered in 2012, and again with this recent study. There's another problem. People have found out that this park was part of a Department of Interior park allocation acquisition that was meant to be in perpetuity. And so trying to get through the Department of Interior to get this less than 2-mile extension approval through the park is going to take many, many, many years, if it even ends up in anything. The other thing that people mention is the 76 traffic. This does not solve 76 traffic. Caltrans have stated many times that there's no money to increase the width of 76 going eastbound. Therefore, any additional traffic that may be artery that may come into 76 will only increase the issues that the community, Oceanside and Vista and others experience with that. You add some of the projects that are already here, FedEx and potentially Amazon, and you have just a nightmare. And it's not anything Oceanside can do. It's a Caltrans issue. And finally, now is the time. There have been 2 separate councils with 2 separate requests, almost over 2 decades, trying to get this off the circulation plan because it's too costly, it's too complex, it's not creating any value, and we have all kinds of other issues with relationship to the way the park was created with the Department of Interior. So now's the time to take this off the circulation plan once and for all, as directed twice by 2 different councils over the years. And I would really appreciate if you would vote to approve the removal of the Melrose extension from the circulation plan tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Diane Nygaard.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Diane Nygaard representing Preserve Calavera, and we are the outside organization that was mentioned earlier as having sued over this particular project. And there was a settlement agreement, and as a result of that, we're precluded from opposing the project. But I can assure you we have not signed off on this final design. And while I can't oppose the project, I can certainly help you put it into context of the bigger picture of transportation issues in Oceanside. And there's 3 points I'd like to make about that. First is that land use and transportation need to be linked. That was a fatal flaw with the 2012 circulation element. If you remember, it was done without any update of the land use in the general plan. This time, we are undergoing an update of our general plan. We have identified our land use issues. We do know where Oceanside is going to grow, and Oceanside is going to grow along those major transportation corridors. So we have the opportunity to do that proper linkage. That growth is not located where this project is. Secondly, the transportation system is really not just roadway expansion. State law, regional and state funding for transportation require all of us to look at complete streets, to look at the entire transportation system, not just vehicles, but bicycles, pedestrians, and public transit. So people really have choices. And again, with our general plan update, we're looking at that big picture. It was not done the same way when this last circulation element update was done. And thirdly, we don't have unlimited resources. I call to your mind the figures from the circulation element back in 2012 and look at all of the roadways. You know this from your own driving around the city, all of the roadways that are already in failing conditions, many of which we have opportunities to do improvements, to spend those dollars wisely and to do them where it will make a significant difference as compared to this project. And you've heard earlier what kind of no impact this project would have. So I'd ask you to look at all of those issues when you put this into context. And I believe there were some other public comments that were sent in writing that I would hope that the staff will actually highlight for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. That's it for Zoom. Okay. Do we have anybody in the council chambers?
Hello, Chairman. I emailed a request to speak. I emailed it this morning.
Can you go ahead and identify yourself?
My name is Joan Herskowitz.
Okay, Joan, you'd like to speak on this item, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm speaking on behalf of the Buena Vista Audubon Society. The Melrose extension would traverse 2 areas within Guajome Regional Park, resulting in a loss of parkland. It would leave an impact on habitat in the park, including wetlands, and is in conflict with wetland buffer standards. The road would also cause adverse impacts on a wildlife corridor. If allowed to proceed, it would only provide minimal relief of traffic congestion and is an expensive project that would be locally funded. There would be additional costs associated with the need to mitigate the biological impacts. In addition, as mentioned previously, the Department of Interior has required that this park be maintained in perpetuity, which is my understanding, and that would be an impediment. Therefore, we do not support this road extension and request that the Commission recommend its removal from the city's circulation element. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's it for, okay. Those in the chamber, if you would like to, if you plan on speaking on this item, come forward. I don't see anybody coming forward, so we will close the public hearing on this item and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Hayes, do you want to continue with any questions or comments, or?
Sure. I do have one question about how, I know there was a question that came up during the public comments just now about funding and how much has been spent. It sounds like we got pretty far along and we're already doing some. So how much money have we spent to date on this project?
The date on the funding for the project?
Yes.
The project was in the design process, and there was a reference, for example, to Section 4F of the Interior Department for parkland conversion to land and all that. We didn't even initiate any of that. We just completed the design, and there was not a specific funding mechanism identified. There were options looked at, but nothing specific in terms of potentially Transnet money, our own gas tax money, and transportation funding is a very dynamic world. For example, SB1 would not have been around those days, and the federal reauthorization may happen, more federal money would be available. So for funding a project of this size, you always keep your options open because it's a dynamic field out there. And at that time, we had not prepared a specific funding scenario how the project is going to be paid.
I'm sorry, I should have asked my question differently. How much has the city spent on this to date?
To this date, the project, we invested in preparing the environmental document. We paid for the consultant to design and some survey work, about somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 to $3 million we have already invested in development of this project.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question along those lines? So one of the callers said, because it seems like one of the drivers on this is money to do a project, and is there value in doing this one? So one of the callers indicated that maybe it would be better if we don't spend the money on this project to extend it, that money get directed to other needs within the city for the circulation, which I think is a good idea. But we have no assurance that that would be the case. It sounds like you said, it's a very dynamic thing in the city to find funding and do that. So if we lean that way and say, okay, we're not going to spend it here, let's hope we spend it elsewhere, what assurance, or do we not have any assurance that that actually will happen?
Well, as they say, the power of the purse rests with the city council. They will make the decisions on where we spend our limited funds. They decide. Sometimes we present a CIP, a capital improvement program, to the council. The council may approve it, may amend it, may delete, or may add, as they just did in the last round of CIP that we went through. So those decisions rest with the council. The city council, up to March 27, 2019, felt that this is an important project, and that's why they approved all the consultant contracts for the EIR and the design work and all that, which I just mentioned, about $2.5 to $3 million. But then the council also, it's their decision and their prerogative to change their mind, and at that time they decided they don't want to pursue the project, or at least, I should say, they want to know what are the impacts and consequences of not pursuing the project and deleting it from circulation element. But where the money is going to go is always a decision by the city council.
I'll probably be able, unless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to break it up a little bit, I have a question. Why, right now, we're in the middle of doing a general plan update, circulation element. We've got the Southmore Hills, draft plan going on. We've got a lot of studying going on in our city, the transportation corridors, a lot of stuff's going on. Why would we want to take this off now before all those studies are completed? Or is this something that's integral with those studies, and it's better to take it off now before we go into it? I mean, why are we asked to do it now before those other studies aren't even finished?
And if I could ask a part B to that question, if we were to remove it now, does that mean that it stays out forever, or do we get another bite at this apple later on? If some conditions change, is it permanently and absolutely gone? So that would be part B of that question.
Well, your body, this commission makes a recommendation and city council makes a decision. They have the right to take it out. They have the right to put it back in. It's their call. But once you take it out, it's out until somebody decides that we want to put it back in. And then at that time, we have to go through the same process for putting it back in again. We have to prepare a study and maybe do an EIR amendment, to do a general plan amendment, circulation element amendment. It more often, in my experience, I have seen projects taken out than being added to circulation element. But it can be done. It's a decision for the city council at any time.
So the first part of the question was, why now? Why?
So is there a reason why this is being asked of us now before, because we're in the middle of doing all this great work for our city. I mean, I'm just excited about the general plan update and everything else that's happening, the EIR we're going to be going through. So wouldn't it be wiser to wait till that's all done? And then if it, again, comes out that we don't need it, then it comes out?
That decision, to answer that question, is pure speculation on my part. And I hesitate to do that because the council, March 27, 2019, they directed the staff to separate this project, fast track that, and we are following that direction. Why they made that decision, it's speculation on my part, and they wanted to have the information. They felt it's urgent, and we are following their directions. And as I said, with apologies for delay because of staffing changes and the pandemic delays and so on and so forth, we are presenting the information to you, and we are going to present the information plus your recommendation to the council. But why the urgency? That was a council decision.
Yeah, so we could, as a recommendation, link everything and say, no, we want to see it all stay together, as part of this entire exercise instead of segregating it as was contemplated 2 years ago. So there's a lot of latitude in this, a lot of discretion.
Well, I have a question about that. So
Yes.
if we were to say we wanted to link it into the future plans that they're studying now, would that be another big expense to the city? Because it seems to just keep studying it over and over is a waste of money.
Sorry, just to reiterate what I said, is that if we decide to stop this project now and make this decision as part of the circulation element update, pretty much all that we have done so far, which is about $180,000, not all of it, but maybe $150,000 or $100,000 or so, we have to redo, because this study was done with Series 13 ABM1. Circulation element is done with Series 14 ABM2+. So I cannot simply take the report that IBI has prepared for us and give it to Chen Ryan, who's the consultant doing circulation element, and say, add this to your report. They have to redo all these analysis all over with the new numbers.
Can I ask one question about that? Because I'm just, we're doing this right now for a general plan for the city of Ontario, so we're testing different roadways in and out. So as part of the circulation element, we're running the whole thing with the wish list of roadway reductions. And where it fails, then you can simply change the network and run the final loop instead of having to run the whole model over again. So
Yeah,
it's not
obviously,
another $150,000.
That's absolutely correct. It will be less. It will be less. However, it will be cost, and we have. And I wouldn't be in a position tonight without knowing specifically what we are going to ask Chen Ryan to do to give you a cost estimate. But it will be additional cost, and pretty much none of IBI has done for us is of any use in that endeavor, because the models and the numbers and the assumptions will completely change. How much will it cost? I don't know. But we are going to do certain other analysis, sensitivity analysis for other projects throughout the city as well. So if your decision and the council decision is to do it as part of circulation element, it can be done, but these numbers will change and there will be additional costs.
But it sounds like there's a cheaper way to do it than the
There's a much
150,000.
cheaper way.
Okay.
And one other question, Mr. Bahadouri, because you did allude to the fact that the council could vote to put this back in. You have a pretty long history of being a traffic engineer. Have you ever seen a roadway put back in after it's been deleted?
I have not seen.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bama.
Back on safety and fire evacuation. This, from what you said, Commissioner Hayes, there's about 1,000 homes, I guess, in Jeffrey's Ranch and the condos and also the senior living place. Just 1,000 in that, just 1,000?
I was guessing because
Okay.
it was a question I had asked of staff, and I asked it too last minute, so I don't think they were. Jeff, you weren't able to get that.
So just
right?
around 1,000.
Let's just round it to 1,000.
So 1,000 families or whatever, housing people. So if there was a lilac fire again, which comes up the river like that, and everyone had to evacuate off of into 76 and go, west probably because it's coming that way, just like we had before, the probabilities of that is in your orderly, amazing, planned out way, it's going to be fine, right?
I will let Chief Ward answer that.
Because one way for all those people seems kind of crazy. I know that the Melrose extension is very expensive and it's been very contentious for years, but it does offer, if there's a way to do some kind of a way to go out there for just, I don't know, fire safety even, and not make it such a huge roadway. I mean, just another way for people to evacuate, even if it's like a trail for bikes, for like you said, to get to school. I mean, is there anything they can do that's less costly? I don't know. But back to the fire safety question. So,
It's hard to predict, honestly, depending on where the fire is, the location, all that different information as far as particular to the fire will dictate where it's going. If the wind is driving in one direction versus another direction, it's all based on where the fire is going and where it's predicted to be. And so that would give us an idea where we need to evacuate, how far out, how intense the fire is, how big the fire is, how far it's moving, if it's wind driven, if it's terrain driven. All these factors play a role in it. I can't say that one way would do contribute more to one exit leaving or two exits. It's just depending on where the fire is going. It's hard to predict if one with that area, if you predict about 1,000 houses, if we do it correctly, we could probably get everyone out in a systematic manner, depending, again, the time of day again. Are they home? Is it nighttime? What are the circumstances behind it? Are they on home phones? Are they cellular phones? Are they picking up their phones? All those become a thing. One of the things that we would work with was PD to ensure that we go door to door to make sure everyone's out in a systematic approach. Again, with that new county system, it's easy to pinpoint exact areas and get those out in far in advance before, instead of right now, is more in advance. Getting that stuff.
So the Lilac fire kind of educated everybody into like just how to do this, because I was involved in that fire as far as evacuating goes, and it was pretty much of a mess. But now I've heard a lot about the fire department and police department working together to do an organized.
Yeah, not only that fire, but many fires recently in the county put that all together. For the last 2 years, we've been practicing and doing evacuation plans. We actually have every year, 2 years, we have get-togethers with the county and all the stakeholders, and actually have drills on different how we do it within that. Our organization has participated in all those, and our chief officers, so we have a good idea of how to perform that system with CAL FIRE. And I'm not sure if you guys realize we have in that time frame, we've already established a mutual threat zone with CAL FIRE. So we have that whole corridor on the east side as a mutual threat zone with CAL FIRE. And so we have an agreement with them and bringing resources automatically into those areas without a first alarm right away. So that mutual threat zone is already set up and established. So we already have contacts and a plan with CAL FIRE to evacuate those east side areas of Oceanside.
Very nice. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, that's good.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have enough input from staff? Are there any other questions? What's the consensus or?
So we're talking about taking something that's.
Go to your mic.
Oh, sorry. So this has been in the circulation for how long, Element? 20 years?
25 plus years, I think.
The project has been on circulation element at least since 1990.
So we've got something in, and I wanted to ask the last speaker, does the fire department, if they had a choice, would they like to see this in when they're doing their life safety things? I mean, and I would think, yeah, is that a fair question?
That's a fair question.
Well, can we ask the fire department?
Yes, I was going to ask them.
Oh, okay.
He's a human. Good job.
Well, obviously, I'm coming here as a speaker just first time on basically, so I don't have a whole bunch of educated knowledge of what is actually being planned. I know the extension, the bridge, and all that type stuff, but the whole background of what you guys are talking about, I can't really speak of because I'm not really informed to make an educated opinion. Obviously, the more exits that you have, the better, and that's a reality no matter how you look at it. But at the same time, could it be an impact? Yes. Could it not be? Yes. So it's just depending on the information that's provided. I can't give you an educated decision without all information surrounding it. Chief Robinson probably a little more involved than I was. I'm stepping in for him. But again, just giving you obviously the synopsis of common sense of more exits the better, just like a building type thing. But that's, at the same time, I think we'll be able to manage the emergencies in that area pretty quickly and appropriately.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, can I just follow up?
Yes,
I mean, just to finish up my comments,
Yes.
is that
Yes.
is that it's in the circulation now. We're being asked without a staff recommendation to take it out. What I've heard from Commissioner Hayes is there more questions than answers, and so I don't know that I could say, yeah, let's take it out. So if I were going to make a motion, it would be, I think to your point, let's let the general plan. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I'm sitting here thinking, what if we left it in versus taking it out? I mean, are we obligated to do something about it as opposed to sort of just saying, well, it's in there, but we may never do anything with it? Is that an option?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, the city is not under any obligation about the timing of building and implementing any link that's on circulation element.
So we could take no action, the city council could take no action on this extension and just leave it in the circulation element as a road that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
They can do that if they so choose.
Good analogy.
Okay,
That's good. Hey, I have one question for him, actually.
absolutely, go ahead.
Okay, in your like transportation modeling and land use that you mentioned, when you look at all that, you mentioned several projects the city gave you, like North River Farms and Villa Story, and I can't remember all the other ones. Did you actually look at all the land uses that maybe haven't been built yet? As far as on, like when you come down Melrose, there's a bunch of open land right there. I'm not sure what the zoning is on that, but has that been all factored into the modeling? And also on the other side of the river, there's a whole study we're doing there, and even just with the existing housing that is allowed, which is about 1,200 houses in Southmore Hills based on our 2.5 acre per dwelling unit. Has that been factored into your modeling?
Yeah, yes, Sandag, when they want to run a model, they identify an area where they need land use and socioeconomic information, and they divide it into traffic analysis zones, and they have tables that shows that information, housing, population, employment, type of land use, and they share it with us before running the model for us. For this project, they have prepared those tables. They have shared it with us, and we have shared it with the planning department staff. They have checked those data versus the city's approved land uses, and we feel confident that we have captured all the approved. If there are changes in the future, that's to be. But at this time, we can put in what is approved, and I let Mr. Hunt more elaborate on that review process.
As Hamid mentioned, we work with Sandag on the regional model for the traffic. They do look at our land uses, and they take that into account. Not only do they take into account the existing projects that are developed on the site, but also the projects that have been approved. And as I understand it, they take a look at potential projects, so vacant lots. So they will look at our land use categories and our density that's allowed in that, and then they will make a projection on that. Now, Sandag, when they do their estimates on traffic, they take a little different approach than they do on the RENA. You guys just reviewed our RENA number, our regional needs for housing. That's a higher number than what Sandag predicts for our traffic, and their logic, whether you agree with it or not, is that they want a traffic system that's built on realism. The RENA numbers aren't realized. They're not actually built. That's a whole nother conversation we can have. But based on that, Sandag has told us in the past that the regional transportation plan that takes Oceanside's numbers is actually smaller than our RENA number. So it's a little complex.
Commissioner Custer, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes. Well, I have a question. So if we leave it in and don't build it for 10 years, I understand it'll have to come under a series, whatever we're at that time, in order to build it then. But in the meantime, just by leaving it in and doing nothing with it, no money has to be spent until 10 years from now in pretend land in 10 years when we go to build it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can leave this link in the city circulation element as it has been for the last 30 odd years. And we can leave it in there and don't spend any money, don't act on any project on that. It's perfectly a city council decision.
So
Seem necessary to take it out.
yeah, unless the city council was thinking that this is a cleanup item, and they just kind of determined that it's never going to happen, so let's clean it up, let's get it out of there. Maybe that was the rationale, because otherwise, to Commissioner Custer's point and to the comment made earlier, it's not like there's a pot of money sitting there dedicated for this project, and if we don't use it, it's going to go to some other things. That's not the case here. It just would sit there and nothing would ever happen if we don't act on it.
I have not been present at the council decision. I have watched it on YouTube, and I have listened to all the discussions, and my impression is what, Mr. Chairman, you said, that the council felt that this is a cleanup item, and they wanted the staff to address it.
Can I follow up on that real quickly? I think my only concern with that is that the city had been marching along from, I think you said 2009 until 2019, spending money on this, and it seemed like it was becoming much more close to reality. And when I watched the city council hearing, there were a lot of people in the room that were opposed to it, not one single person from the neighborhood that came to speak in favor of it. So city council was faced with a room of about 30 people, including children getting up at the dais and crying, opposed to the project. So from my perspective, it seemed like the city had been in a path to implementing it, and that the hurry and not include this as part of the general plan was getting too close to reality. But that's my own take on it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I might ask that you ask Ms. Goodkind and Mr. Raines if they have any comments, because they are on Zoom.
I will do that.
And then after that, Mr. Borrego would like to make some comments.
Commissioner Goodkind and Commissioner Raines, you've heard our discussion and where we are. We're kind of all over the place, but do you have any insight, any thoughts that you want to share? Commissioner Goodkind, I'll go to you first.
Okay. I just want like clarification. I'm looking at one of the reports. So removal of the extension would result in improved delay for certain intersections. Is that accurate? Staff, please.
Yes, some intersections, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, this has been studied to death over decades, and I personally cannot, in good conscience, vote to allow this to continue to be studied to death. I don't see. I've followed this for many years, and I don't see a net benefit. And so for those reasons, it sounds like I might be in the minority the way this discussion is going, but I just don't see sufficient value or benefit to the community to continue to spend money on this, because if we do kick the can down the road, there will be millions more spent on it. I just don't see how that justifies the cost or benefit to the community. So I will not be voting to keep this in the plan, in the element. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Raines, how about you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple thoughts. Nothing I heard tonight really persuaded me to vote to take it out of the plan. I share concerns similar to Commissioner Hayes in the fact that public safety, both fire and also as a former police officer, response times getting to that neighborhood. I think I agree with the fire department representative. The more access and exit points we have, the better. As far as value to the city in general, I think the value to that community, regardless of the 30 or so people that Commissioner Hayes talked about. I'm concerned with the other 970 people who didn't show up, who probably had to work, and probably only have one access point to that neighborhood. In fact, Commissioner Hayes even said there were unintended consequences, and one of those consequences, I can give you a real life example. I didn't choose to move to that neighborhood because of that specific problem we're facing with tonight. And my big concern would be the price tag, because that is a lot of money. But I think I agree with city staff, that's in the purview of the city council. And I'm just looking at it from a planning perspective. So with that being said, I think I will not be voting to remove it.
Thank you. It looks like Jonathan Borrego, you had your hand up and you want to contribute.
Yes, thank you for calling on me, Chair Rosales, and members of the Planning Commission. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context, with regards to a question that was asked earlier regarding the City Council's action and directing staff on this item. And, the question about, whether or not there's any harm in leaving it in the circulation element and just simply not funding the improvements. As some of you may know, prior to council's direction in 2019 to staff to remove it or initiate actions to remove it from the circulation element, prior to that, staff had actually been, that was, within the not too distant past, staff had been directed to essentially reinitiate the planning for actually installing the extension. And at that point in time, we were directed to include funding in the CIP to begin efforts to essentially start planning to build it. Obviously, that decision generated a lot of public controversy, and we've talked a little bit about that tonight, and, whether or not that opposition was representative of the entire community, I guess, is something that can be argued. But certainly there was a lot of public scrutiny of that decision by council to redirect us to reinitiate the effort. Staff did some preliminary analysis and did some cost estimating as well. And once that information was shared with the city council, which it was at a subsequent meeting, then there was, essentially at that time, council's direction was, given the cost of the extension and, the controversy behind it, they directed staff, pretty much unequivocally to come back and with the request to take it out and not to wait for the general plan update. I think that, the concern of council at that time was by leaving it in, even if it wasn't funded and never built, just having it in there causes a lot of consternation. And I will say that keeping it in, if it is never intended to be built, does really, from my perspective anyway, not represent a true picture of the circulation system when we're doing future traffic modeling. If it's on the books, it has to be modeled and accounted for when we're running our traffic runs. So, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to leave it in and never build it, because even if the intent is never to build it, the fact of the matter is, as long as it remains in our circulation element, we have to model it. And traffic studies that are done for future projects have to assume that the roadway is going to be built. So I just wanted to share that little bit of perspective before you make your final decision. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that input, and I think I used the word obligation in my comments about leaving it in, but never acting on it, whether we were obligated to do something about it, and you just answered that we then still have to consider that in the modeling for the future. So what's true?
Changes my opinion of it.
That changes in my mind too.
Right.
So
I have one more question.
it can't just sit there dormant, I guess.
I know that was, thank you, Jonathan, for that, because that really, opened my eyes to a little bit different perspective also. So I appreciate you kind of enlightening us there. I have one more question, and I was going to just, and now I forgot. Hold that thought.
Keep thinking. Well,
That wasn't that important, obviously.
go ahead.
Question I have. Well, when people continue to move into that area, will at some time in the future, would that be, well, gosh, I wish we had that north-south, another north-south way to get in and out. Is that something that we're eliminating? I don't know. I mean, one thing's for sure. We know that housing is going to continue. It's just on the way up, and everything we see it's not enough. So that's the only thing I see.
Yeah, I think that was kind of posed a different way earlier. That yes, if we eliminate it tonight and the city council acts on that, that in the future, if somebody wanted to bring it back in the fold again, it's not an impossibility. It sounds like it's not common, and maybe it's never happened, but somebody could raise their hand in the city council and say, conditions have changed so dramatically that I want staff to reevaluate this because I think it really needs to go in. That it is a possibility, but it sounds like it's not very commonly something that occurs.
Commissioner Hayes, I would like to know, because you are an expert and I am not. I would like to hear what you think about this. I've heard you ask a bunch of questions, but from just, why would I eliminate something that I have that if in the future I want to go back and pick it up, it's not there anymore. We know we're not going to go back and get it. Right. So let's just not even talk about that, because that's never going to happen. Do you think that in the future it's possible that we wish we wouldn't have eliminated it?
Yes, and thank you for that nice segue, because I have 3 key points I'd really like to talk about. Good. One is congestion. We already have an issue with it, and we're seeing a little bit more of it on 76 and College because of the lack of this extension. That's proven from looking at some of the previous traffic studies that had assumed that traffic would want to go that way, and it is wanting to go that way. It's just having to find another way to get there, which is 76 to Santa Fe or 76 to College. So we already have a lot of projects that were approved because that extension was supposed to be there. I don't think Mission Vista High School would have been built there if it hadn't been for the assumption that that extension would one day be there, for example. There is additional development that's happening, especially on the other side of the river, which, you know, the extension of Melrose Bridge, you think this extension's expensive, try building a bridge. That bridge, I think, would really have a lot of trouble getting funding. It wouldn't compete very well for funding if it's not connected to a larger north-south connector that has much more utility and benefit to not just Oceanside, but also Carlsbad and the region as a whole. So you look at the overall benefits of that extension. Without that extension, the bridge is never going to be built, in my personal opinion, because we would have a really hard time competing for funding for that bridge. So, which cuts off the legs of what's already approved over there on the other side of the river, the 1,200 homes that Luis mentioned, North River Farms that council approved. And we already have a problem with trying to evacuate. We have 2 bridges that get out from that side of the river. So without, this is one of the reasons why I would really like to see this studied as part of the general plan update as a whole. Look at all the development, because that was not assumed in the previous Sandag model. Those new land uses that were being identified that are currently in the process right now as part of the land use update, they're not part of this. So we're not able to see where is the potential, what if there are new houses or new development that's happening over there that wasn't captured as part of this? What if we need it at some point? We might not be able to build it right now, but I think it's premature personally to take it out without looking at it as part of our overall general plan update.
And I guess one of the questions is that if we leave it in for a couple of years, we can take it out in a couple of years. I mean, so.
After the general plan's finished.
After the general plan's finished, maybe we look at it again then.
Yeah.
Oh, one other thing with the general plan, they are also doing the safety element update as part of that. So that's the other piece where if we did want to look at that secondary access, and maybe the full roadway isn't needed, but I think that's another opportunity to look at it. There are some new rules coming down from the state, and one of them is a 2 access point. So any neighborhood that has 30 homes or more that only has 1 access point in and out has to be identified. They haven't really identified what we have to do with that information, but I think looking at this as part of the safety element and the circulation element and the land use element update would make the most sense.
So it sounds to me like maybe we're building towards some kind of motion or idea that links what we're being asked to do this evening with the broader general plan update, circulation element, as not a continuous study to death approach, but more of a thoughtful approach or some extra value to linking the 2 together, if that's kind of what I get as a general tone for the dialogue tonight. So, you know, if I've got that right, and I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but if I've got that right, and the rest of the commissioners think that that might work, at least as a recommendation to City Council, then that's kind of where I am, so.
Yeah, I did remember my question. It was all about the bridge and what the reality would be if we took away this extension, if that bridge would ever be feasible. And Jolene just, said pretty much in her expertise that it's probably unlikely, and that's really needed for just the existing zoning we have out there right now. And if this agritourism idea, which we really all wants to happen, it couldn't happen. I mean, I'm not sure what we're doing with this draft community plan if we can't have this other access. So I think it might be wise to, it's not like we're kicking the can down the road. It's almost just like waiting for all of our studies to be finished with our general plan, our circulation plan, our safety plan, our draft South Moore Hills community plan. When all this is done and we figure out what we're doing with our city, which is really close, maybe 2 years, it might be finished, right? It's not like we're not that much longer. We've already waited a pretty long time with this Melrose extension. It might be okay just to hang on for a couple of more years. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's kind of where we are at the moment. Commissioners on Zoom, any additional thoughts? I see Commissioner Goodkind shaking her head no. Commissioner Raines, anything else or?
Oh, no, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll go along with whatever seems to be the consensus as long as it's not removing it right now.
Okay. All right. Unless there's any other questions for staff, at this point, I think we've heard from a wide range of staff members. I appreciate everybody's input this evening. It was actually a good conversation. Then I will look to the commission to start a motion, see what we can build here. Commissioner Hayes, you want to take a stab at it?
You're the one to do it.
Drive it home.
Just tell them not to spend any more money.
Yeah, we don't want to spend any more money.
Yeah, add that in.
I know. Let's see. I guess I would make a motion to not delete the Melrose extension, but to wrap it into, how would you say that? To incorporate it into the general plan update that is currently underway.
Right.
And not to proceed with any additional engineering or other type of work associated with the extension itself at this time.
Okay. Before I ask for a second on that motion, I'll ask city staff, does that provide enough of an idea what the commission wants to do? Is that enough detail, I guess, in the motion?
As I understand it, Mr. Chairman, the motion would be to the Planning Commission recommends not deleting the extension and instead incorporating the extension into the general plan update. I didn't quite understand the last clause about no further engineering studies. I mean, the general plan update would involve additional studies.
And I have one question, maybe.
Specifically to the extension that was underway for being constructed. So just no additional funding would be allocated or spent on moving forward with the building of the extension is kind of what I was trying to get at.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Custer.
Would it have to come, with what we've just proposed, would it have to come under Series 14 or whatever number they're on?
Okay, so, I mean, you heard the motion. We haven't got a second yet.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hayes, since I have to write the report that goes to council, so that we understand what is your recommendation, is that we do a sensitivity analysis for with and without the extension as part of the circulation element update that Chen Ryan is doing. Is that your motion?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
And I think the second, Hamid, don't go anywhere yet. I think just for clarification, if it's added to the overall general plan evaluation, does that kick this into the Series 14? I think just for clarification.
Yes, all the circulation element update studies will be using Series 14 ABM2 Plus that SANDAG will be adopting later this year.
So I guess my real question for that is, are we creating a great expense by doing this? An additional large expense?
I I wouldn't be able to offer you a semi-intelligent estimate without scoping out what needs to be done, discussing it with Chenra and staff, and then maybe we'll be able to offer a more educated estimate how much it's going to cost. At this time, it's going to be pure speculation on my part.
Okay.
Can you postpone it?
I guess there probably will be some additional expense, and staff will have to figure out what that is. So I'll go to you one more time, City Planner. We have the motion. I think we got good clarification. Is that enough for you to proceed if I then ask for a second on that motion?
Yes, it is. We need to think about the mechanics. You have a resolution attached to the staff report that was anticipating the Planning Commission recommending to delete it. So we would have to draft up a resolution and bring it back, or we could have the chair look at it and see if that is consistent with the consensus of the Planning Commission. So it's up to the body.
Yeah, do you want to delegate that to me to work with staff to make sure we get the language correct, or do you want to actually see that resolution in front of you before it goes to City Council as a final sort of check on what we're trying to do here? Commissioners?
I think you're fine. Yeah, I think I agree. We'll put the burden on you.
It sounds like mechanically they have enough confidence in me to work with you on that change resolution.
And we can work with you. It's not like a development project where we have 100 conditions of approval or something. This is somewhat more succinct.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so I think we have I know we have a motion on the floor, and we got good confirmation that I think that'll work. Staff's going to work on the language, the mechanics behind drafting a new resolution. So motion was made by Commissioner Hayes. Would somebody like to second that motion?
Second it.
We have a second from Commissioner Custer. So we'll go around the room here and take our vote. Commissioner Custer?
Yes.
Commissioner Hayes?
Yes.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
Yes?
Commissioner Balma?
Yes.
Commissioner Goodkind?
No.
Commissioner Raines?
I'll vote yes.
And I am also a yes. City Planner?
We'll record that as 6 in favor, 1 against. Commissioner Goodkind. The motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, where are we? Okay, that concludes our public hearing items. So appeal of city planner determination, we have nothing on the agenda and nothing under discussion items. So we will go to commissioner reports. I really don't have anything to share with the commission this evening. Vice Chair Morrissey just left the room for a moment. So Commissioner Goodkind?
No report. Thank you.
Welcome. Commissioner Balma?
I also have no report. Thank you.
Commissioner Custer?
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Hayes?
Nothing to report.
And Commissioner Raines?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You're welcome. City Planner, update on projects or things of interest to the commission?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, your agenda out into the future, your next meeting is on July 12th. There is a development in St. Malo area that is requesting a variance. We are recommending denial on this one. We usually bring that to your attention because it's unusual to bring forward a project and recommend denial on it. There's another project with 4 apartments at 1915 South Tremont. On July 26th, you have a manufacturing and distribution cannabis facility, JK Manufacturing. This is at 2420 Industry Street. So this would be a new cannabis facility. We're still working out whether they want to apply under their medical cannabis application or change it. So we'll see. On August 9th, The Planning Commission, we are scheduled to bring forward a vision plan for the general plan update. This is similar to the framework for the South Morro Hills. It's not a regulatory document. It gives direction to staff to then draft the documents, the elements, including the CERC element, as we go forward. So it's more the high-end strategies, big-ticket items. Council, going backwards, they did adopt the housing element on June 16th, so we've got that within our deadline of August. And we do have a letter from HCD explaining there are some items that we need to address, and we will work with HCD on that. It will have to come back for adoption. That would go through this body, I believe, on its way to the council. They also adopted the emergency shelter zoning amendment, which this body recommended, and then they approved your Planning Commission work plan without any modifications. Going out to August 4th, the Amazon project didn't get not just one appeal, not just 2 appeals, but 3 appeals of that project. So it's a little unusual. I don't mean to make light of it, but we're working on the logistics. I believe the bylaws state that if there's more than one appellant, then they get a total of 30 minutes, and so we'll divide it up and give them 10 minutes each.
Can I ask a clarification on that? So those appeals would come to this body first or to City Council?
No, they're appealing the Planning Commission's decision, so it goes to the council.
Okay. And are those, can you tell us the nature of the appellants, or?
Yeah, 2 were by lawyers from outside the city that we're not that familiar with, and they were appealing it on CEQA grounds. And then a 3rd one was from the neighboring residents.
Okay, thank you.
And then for council, September 15th, we'll bring the general plan vision that I just described. And that's all for the agenda. I did have a request, or at least a request to discuss it, I guess, from Jolene and Tom regarding scheduling one-on-one meetings with staff to have briefings prior to the Planning Commission meetings, perhaps for big ticket items only. Perhaps, well, let me back up. First of all, staff is fully in support of Planning Commission reaching out ahead of the meeting and asking us questions. We are better prepared to serve you, to provide that information to you. I guess the question is, do we set up a standing meeting? I guess I'll listen to you folks. Would you like that? I'm not sure where we would draw the line on what is a big item. The way we do it right now, and Jolene had an extensive meeting last week with police and fires. We just wait for your request. I could certainly make suggestions and reminders. I just went through your agenda. I could say, and by the way, this one you may want to request a briefing or think about a briefing. So whatever you guys want to do. I guess I'll be candid. I'm not sure we want to set up a mandatory briefing with all 7 of you and have it on our calendar and then call or email them to confirm that we're deleting it. There's a lot of unnecessary
we
time.
absolutely do not want to do that. We don't want to take your time in that manner and our own time as well. I think the way you put it at the end is you update us at every meeting in terms of what's coming up. If it's, so there's some discretion in terms of what do we feel is big or warranted to do a one-on-one. I think that's a decision that each commissioner is going to need to make, and then reach out to you, Jeff, and say, hey, this one's important to me. Can we get together? I need a little bit more information before the meeting. I think if it's that informal or, structured that way, for me, that works. I don't know what the other commissioners think.
I think that's good, yeah. It would be good if you told us if something was, like you forewarned us already that it was unusual to bring in the St. Malo project ahead that you are recommending against. Forewarn us of something like that.
One other thing I would really like to know is if there is a project that I might not be as familiar with, or an action that I'm not as familiar with, and one of the other commissioners request a briefing, if you could let me know, because I'd probably request a similar briefing just so I'm familiar with it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Could I have a little bit more on the August 9th vision plan, Southmore Hills? You brought that up. Like, what is going to happen that night, or what do you propose is happening that night?
It's going to be very similar to what we did with the South Morrow Hills framework. So it will have some visionary, high-level policies and goals that aren't regulatory, that won't be adopted, but will get the buy-in or blessing or head nod from the Planning Commission through the council, and that gives direction to staff to then go back and draft the elements, the land use element, circulation element, conservation, community facilities, all of them.
We didn't really vote or do anything. The last time we were presented that, we were just here as an informational type of a piece. The first time we heard it, right? So now this time, we're going to be asked to actually vote a recommendation to City Council on whatever you're going to share with us that night.
That's a good question. I don't envision, pardon the pun, I don't see you making an actual vote on that. I think what we did with the South Morrow Hills is we just asked for your comments, and we take notes, and then we forward those comments. We try and summarize. The council didn't vote on the South Morrow Hills framework. They just gave us comments.
Just comments. So it's mostly just like the last time, kind of more like read what is presented, and we'll just give you comments and suggestions to give to council from our opinions. Kind of. Okay.
The intent is we don't want to spend a lot of time and resources going down a road that we shouldn't be going down. But we don't have the information, we don't desire to lock anyone into specific details and adoption, and this is etched in granite.
Now, I can maybe ask this of you, Barbara, after this commission, because like here I am, I'm a South Morrow Hills resident. I've been working on the vision plan for South Morrow Hills for probably 10 years plus. So am I too close to this to even comment anymore? I mean, I'm pretty much, that's the program that we envisioned and worked on. We gave to the city. They actually carried it through to get to where it's at today. So who am I now in this whole...
Who am I?
I mean, it's kind of like I worked on this forever. I live there, and now you're working on it, and it's affecting. I live up in that area. So legally, what's my chances of even going further on this?
Well, we can follow up with a more specific, analysis of your particular situation. But in general, I will say that legislative actions like this are different from, and you have a little bit more leeway than on project specific, where you have a, where you would, the decision, you would clearly have an economic interest in, or a financial interest in the decision. There is, like I said, a little bit more latitude with legislative. But that said, I will follow up and give you more specifics.
To make sure I'm not treading on thin ice.
Commissioner Raines or Commissioner Goodkind, you heard the conversation about the one-on-ones if a big item comes forward, and I think most of the consensus here was you'd reach out because you'd want more information. Does that approach work for the two of you?
Yep.
It works for me, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. Okay, anything else, City Planner? Very good. We are adjourned then, I think correctly, till July 12th.
I mean, after I heard Jonathan.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Summer vacation.